understand the essence and the nature of Jeet Kune Do, we have to understand the history. Sijo, Grandmaster Bruce Lee, was a student of Ip Man. So he was in the direct lineage of the greatest Wing Chun master ever, next to Ip Chun, depending on, Wing Chun politics. But that notwithstanding, some real hard fighting Hong Kong modern kung fu. In terms of modern, I mean, these guys sparred as hard as boxers do. And Grandmaster Bruce Lee changed the system of Wing Chun, which has evolved from tiger and snake and crane kung fu. And he said, these traditional forms and these big flowery circles and this forward facing is not going to work against a skilled school modern opponent. So he took this modern stance, but yet he kept the essence, the science, and the counterpunching, the simultaneous movements, the combination, and the dirty kung fu fighting, which is not allowed in the ring or in competition, like the eye jabs and the spearing fingers to the throat and so forth. And, using these brilliant triple rhythm combinations, which tend to typify Junfan Chinese boxing, this kind of like peri-peri hit or Tan Sao Peri hit, and that kind of triple bop is the setup for these kind of like parry, joint lock, hit, control, use that kind of snake and crane classic joint locking and dirty fighting, if you will, eye gouging and tearing and spearing fingers and so forth. So point of what I'm saying is Grandmaster Bruce Lee invented this stuff decades ago. But what he also did, because he wrote 13 books and he was a philosopher, and only one of those books was really specifically on the science and the techniques of the hands and so forth. I mean, he was a deep, profound guy. So he just said more than anything, incorporate what works and abandon what is useless. And that principle of using what works and abandoning what doesn't work set the groundwork for Jeet Kune Do evolving into a whole number of things. And one thing he said in his book, which is priceless, he said, don't get caught up in the terminology or the words. And people did decades ago. And unfortunately, they still do. He was like, it's all about the techniques. It's all about the efficacy. Forget about the terminology. Forget about the schools and the lineages and the styles, and especially formalization. Like, he really hated forms, which were really big and an instrumental part in teaching Westerners martial arts, Japanese, Chinese, whatever martial arts forms, because they're good at just teaching beginners. But Bruce Lee abhorred and hated forms, which is why Jeet Kune Do is principles, unlike karate, Kyokushin, or all these styles which have forms. There is no form in Jeet Kune Do. There's a bunch of stances and a bunch of ideas and principles, but no formal forms per se. So the idea is, unlike boxing, where you have your rear side, your power side in the back, so you can really light somebody up, in Jeet Kune Do, you have your power side in the front. Because Grandmaster Bruce Lee knew that a jab or any front side attack landed much more frequently than rear side attacks, even though rear side attacks might have more leverage, might or might not have more leverage depending on how you throw them. Usually they do. So the idea of having your dominant side forward and not in the back is one of the innovations of Jeet Kune Do, as is this idea of intercepting and blasting, coming in with a defense and simultaneous offense, which is called Lin Seal Dai Da. So namely, while I'm parrying, I'm hitting. While I'm slipping and parrying, I'm hitting. I'm not just throwing a shot, I'm throwing a shot defensively, because at the exact same time that I'm throwing it, I'm also throwing defense. So it's a very forward-moving system. It's a very intercepting system. It relies on the sacred geometry and the gates and the ideas of Wing Chun, which is a very precise, very formulated martial art, which has a limited amount of forms, but those forms typify this type of geometry, which is so specific and so exact and so scientific in terms of center line principle. The way that Grandmaster Bruce Lee adapted and modified this center line principle to modern combatives is just brilliant, because he was the first person really to break things down technically in that way, and yet philosophically keep himself open so that he was non-dogmatic. It was not like, this is karate, this is kung fu, this is hapkido. He's like, forget all that stuff. Just let's work on what's effective. Let's pressure test it. And that's why he created these gloves, the idea of the open finger MMA gloves, originally created by Grandmaster Bruce Lee. Why? Because he wanted to incorporate grappling as well as striking, and just make things as difficult as possible for both arts, so that both arts would educate each other, inform each other, and improve, which, you know, happened. It took him sacrificing his life and the triads ending his life for him sharing this great art with us, but it is what it is. That's the truth of the matter. So in terms of the technique, let's look at this beautiful Jeet Kune shell. It's not a Philly shell, it's a Jeet Kune shell, and it's broken down so much more specifically than any boxing coach I've ever heard break down a Philly shell per se in a boxing school. First and foremost, we train very hard blocking punches with this pinched position. So this is super hard. This hand is pressing hard to this shoulder, and this is a gate which is closed now. So you cannot hit anywhere here. On top of that, this straight line of the shoulders is pitched back a great deal, so that this shoulder, you could literally rest, you know, it's like the height of an apple. It's directly on top of this shoulder, but we're lateral. I'm just doing it this way so that you can see. That's a huge difference from this. There is so much more targeting open here than there is here. And also look at that. There's also, look at the distance. Measure not only this height of the target shrinking, because it's blocked by the shoulder. This is, we're using this to block. This is our blocking right here combined with this. But we're also, while not changing the distancing of our weapon at all, we're moving our target, we're moving our knockout points. One of them is completely disappeared now. Like, you cannot hit somebody's chin in this closed position. And the only thing which is really open, the temple, look how far it's moved. Bam! Just by tilting the shoulders back a little bit. So this is a huge part of it. Tilting the shoulders back, closing that guard, and training hard shots. I can't really put the fingers together because I'm in these awesome gloves. But closing the fingers, and so this is a hard shell, and tilting back. And of course, we have to train out of this position. You are going to get knocked out by a good left hooker. If you open, like do a karate block against a left hook here, got to grab the back of your head and move away from the shot while it's coming in. This is, if you're used to Muay Thai and MMA, you really don't turn away from the shot. You kind of, you know, so if shot's coming in here, you brace against it and lean into it. And boxing and Jeet Kune, you roll from the shot. So in this very slippery style, we're pitched back, we're closed, we're very bladed, we're pulling, we're slipping. But also, we're defensively responsible, grabbing the back of the head. We have excellent, excellent coverage of the body, the kidneys. We're going to pull that card down when it's coming. We're not just going to try to lean over. We're going to actively pull it down and then roll under if they fake this out and try to come up top. There's just answers for everything that the opponent has in this shell, which makes it so brilliant. What are we open for? Sadly, leg kicks, because if you're not in this type of power stance, like your classic kickboxing stance, the more you get into this advanced kickboxing stance, let's kind of Jeet Kune or Benny the Jet stance, the harder it is to check leg kicks. And leg kicks are an easy knockout for anyone, low leg kicks. So we can modify this Jeet Kune shell and kind of turn it forward a little bit, but we lose the bladed nature of it. So you really have to train hard to check leg kicks. It can be done. Benny the Jet and some other real good kickboxers could check leg kicks just as good as anyone out of this bladed stance. but I find it difficult. So I like to modify this shell and occasionally kind of turn it forward a little bit. And of course, you do not have to get stuck in this Philly shell, this Jeet Kune Kung Fu shell. You can always get out of this defensive counter-punching position into a more offensive high guard position, into a bunch of different positions, into your normal position, into a bridged long guard, start rhythming. There's so many ideas and concepts. These are just points in space and ideas in time. Do not get frozen in one stance or one position. That's exactly what Sijo, what Grandmaster Bruce Lee was trying to teach against. He was trying to incorporate this idea of like mental flexibility, and I can't help but say, it reminds me of BJJ. It reminds me of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. The way they're just really mentally flexible, and they know that their art is going to progress every 10 years, every decade on the mat. People are rolling. They came up with a better, inescapable kimura, or from the top, or an inescapable guillotine choke or something. The hand positions, the body positions, everything is improving. And that is the nature of Jeet Kune Do and striking as well. Breaking everything down scientifically, forgetting the labels and the names, and just technically improving our knowledge base, improving our skill base, improving our training base, so that the skill sets can improve. And much respect to those who gave their lives, like Grandmaster Bruce Lee. Great human being, great cultural leader, and also a philosopher who created a martial art. That, to me, that wins the Badass of the Year award. He should be getting a Nobel Prize for that. And I don't mean that jokingly. I mean that literally.